What's up, y'all? This is the first video in a brand new little mini-series we're going to be doing congruently with our traditional Tyranis Customs episodes, where we just focus on some frequently asked questions that I get about our go-karts or just go-karts in general. They're questions I see frequently enough that I think it's worth making a video, and these are just going to be really short, concise videos that just kind of get right to the point and get you the information you need and get you back out so you can hit the shop and be working on your karts instead of searching for answers. Without any further ado, today's frequently asked question is going to be about wheel bearings. I see a lot of people asking me, my wheel bearings are burnt out, what did I do wrong? And there's a couple things that I usually see, and we're going to talk about those here today. I've got one of our Knuckles set up in the bench vise over here, so I'm going to take you guys with me. Let's go check out how to set up these front wheels. Alright, so here's our steering knuckle, and right here is our spindle. The spindle is where your wheel is going to actually slide on and rotate about. And so here's our wheel right here, and you can see on the center right here inside of the wheel, pressed in, is our wheel bearing. There'll be one on this side and then one on the back side as well, so one on either side. We want to make sure that those wheel bearings don't just grind against this plate on the knuckle. And so what we're going to want to do is put in a washer as a spacer. Let's get a little better look at that bearing. And so right here, this is the bearing that you're going to find in most go-kart wheel hubs. We've got a 5/8 inner diameter here, and you can see that the outside of our wheel bearing spins independently of the inside. So there's this little inner sleeve, which ideally will stay and not spin and just sit on your shaft. And then within this, there's a bunch of ball bearings that allow the outer part to rotate independently, which eliminates any kind of excessive wear on your spindle or on the inside of the bearings themselves. So again, we don't want this to sit directly up against the flat section of our knuckle, and so you want to put in a spacer. Now, the tricky part is, this is your average 5/8 washer, okay? But if you were to use this, you'll notice that it's so large in its outer diameter that not only does it contact the inner part of the bearing, but it also comes into contact with the outer edge. And so by using a washer of this size, you're actually not getting any less friction than if you had not used a washer at all. So what you want to use instead is one of these. This is a machine bushing. You can find them at any hardware store. Same inner diameter of 5/8. It'll sit right on there, but this is going to allow me to space my bearing off of the back of the knuckle while also not interfering with the rotation of that outer part of the bearing. So that's perfect. So this is what we're going to want to use. So we'll go ahead, take our first machine bushing, slide that on, and we'll grab our tire. And there we go. And then we're going to want another one of these machine bushings on the opposite side to serve the same exact purpose and keep our lock nut for our axle from interfering with the outside of that bearing. Best practice is to tighten these on by hand, but in the interest of time, I'm going to use an impact. But the second most common thing that I see that people have trouble with is they'll end up tightening this axle nut down too far. It's a little bit counterintuitive because it would seem to make sense. You want to keep this tight, you don't want your wheels coming off. But if you actually tighten this axle nut down too far, because there's no spacer in between the two bearings, one on one side, one on the other, you can actually crush that center part of the bearing out and through, and it'll cause your wheels to lock up. And so let's tighten this down. So this is where I'm generally trying to aim for. It's going to be hard to see on camera, but I have just a hair bit of play back and forth in my wheel. That allows me to know that I haven't driven this axle nut down so far that it's actually pressing the two bearings and causing friction internally. Now if I go ahead, you'll see just barely a little touch, and this is going to spin beautifully. Looks good. If I were to have tightened this too far, so this is too tight, and I don't want to go any tighter because these are good bearings. But you can see the wheel doesn't want to spin freely. And I can feel that there's no play whatsoever. So let's back it off just a little. And right there you can see very little friction, wheel is spinning happily. That's what we want to see. One more thing I'll mention too, if you do use one of these large washers on the outside, not only are you going to get rubbing on your bearing and some additional friction there where we don't want it, but what can also happen is, especially on your driver's side will have a tendency to try and loosen your lock nut. Now if you have a good brand new nylon lock nut like I have here, that's not going to be a problem. It's on there real nice and good. But if yours is a little looser than maybe you'd like it to be, having a large washer like this is going to allow the wheel to provide friction to the washer, and then the washer provide friction to the axle nut, and slowly over time back this axle nut off. That would be on your driver's side if both spindles have right-hand thread. And then on your passenger side, the same process will happen, except it'll tighten your nut down. So you want to be careful of that. I always avoid using these large washers. Seek out those little machine bushings. Not too hard to find, and they're going to save you on replacing your wheel bearings. Well, alright, I think that's a wrap. Like I said, we're going to keep these FAQ series videos short and sweet, and just really to the point for y'all, because most of the stuff that we're going to go over here are things that I've learned from, digging through hours and hours and hours of YouTube content to pick out those little bits of information, and we're going to try and streamline that for you guys. So if you found this helpful, definitely hit that thumbs up button, and if this is your first time here, definitely consider subscribing, because we do some really cool builds on this channel, like the cart you're seeing right behind me. This thing started out as a Yerf Dog 3203, and we've done some pretty crazy mods to it. So there's plenty more to come, and there'll be more of these informational videos coming as well. If you guys have any questions that you're sitting on that you need answered, definitely leave those in the comments. Any ideas for this new video series of frequently asked questions? I'll be pulling stuff off Facebook, from my DMs, from here in the comments. The goal here is to make a series of easy to consume, easy to find, straight to the point videos, answering a lot of the common go-kart questions out there. So if you guys could help us out with that, that would be awesome. And we'll see you in the next one.